Good day. I'm really pleased and happy that Renee Baker is with us today to sit down and have a chat. And this is just one on one, and it's what I call a friendly. I want to hear all about Renee and her career and what she's done in life to get to where she is today. So, welcome, Renee Baker.
Thank you, my dear.
Great. I have to say, I first met you some years ago when I was singing with Chicago Sinfonietta, but I had no idea. You know, when you're next to somebody, you go like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's Renee. She's cool. She's cool." Speaking in the vernacular, should I speak
Hmm.
in a more acceptable tone? Um, and then in trying to prepare for this 1 hour interview, I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Where to start? Where to start? Your body of work as a composer, a conductor, as an instrumentalist, and even as an artist is just it's several lifetimes. So why don't we start at the beginning? I cheated and I watched a little documentary said you were from the Maryland DC
I'm from
area.
DC. DC.
DC. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And you went to the School
Well,
for the Arts?
I went to Tech, which was better than the School for the Arts. Um, at Tech, there was a music major program, and they kept the group of us together pretty much with the curriculum through the entire 3 years. So out of that program came Michael Morgan, John Williams, many of us. We all came out the same year. We went
Hang
through,
on a second. Are you talking about college or high school?
this is high school.
Oh my goodness. A music major in high school?
Yeah, this it was a
Amazing.
performing arts high school.
Okay.
This predates Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington,
All right. I'm
but
so.
I was pretty myopic about what I did. So there
Mm-hmm.
were a lot of people who were right there in the program with me, and I wouldn't know them if they ran up to me and bit me on the street. So I mean, it was viola and violin. I was pretty snooty,
Wait a minute. So
myopic,
you were doubling on instruments. How did that come about?
because in grade school I started on the violin, and then we had no violas in the orchestra, in the DC Youth Orchestra program. And they
Mm-hmm.
said, well, who wants to play viola? I didn't really know what it was, but it looked like the violin. So I said, you know, but I'm always willing to learn something new. I took tons of instruments home, and if I didn't hyperventilate on it, I just kept trying, whatever it was.
So what other instruments do you play, Renee?
Well, just a little piano, violin, and viola. But I experimented with all kinds of stuff,
Uh-huh.
and whatever my parents would listen to. But like my siblings were like, tell Renee to stop that noise. She needs to take that back. Like the clarinet, that went back quickly.
Uh-huh.
Trying to get reeds to buzz. Oh no, not my thing. So I'm a product of the DC Youth Orchestra program. But um,
You know?
well, see, back in that day, schools had vaults of instruments, and just around the country. So we had instruments available. So the way they did music teachers, though, primarily was there'd be one music teacher for instrumental music, but they might not be on the instrument that you chose. So the guy that started me was a saxophone player, Mr.
Okay.
Wallace. Everybody who took lessons from Mr. Wallace. But see, that's where your music ed education comes in, because you supposed to know a little bit about these instruments. And we were elementary school kids, so he started me. But what really got the journey going was, for me, a performance of the National Symphony. They came into the schools, and it was a string quartet. And I just remember I was floored by it. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I just went home and I said, I want to do that. Whatever it is, I want to do that. And so I was able to get instruments from school because we had instruments. So when you chose one, you got one. And then I got into the DC Youth Orchestra program, which is elementary, junior high, and high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed in through 11th grade, um, and just went from orchestra to orchestra, just graduated.
That's pretty
So
amazing.
yeah, the biggest thing about then and now is that I didn't think that having an orchestra was special. We just had programs. I didn't feel like I was doing something white by running home with a violin or viola or a flute. It was music. We had Black and white teachers. Our comrades were Black and white. So it wasn't extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
It was expected that you would excel at whatever you did.
And
That's what coming from Chocolate City did for me.
and
It
I have to say, it's the beauty of it shows you the beauty of possibility in later life for both groups of people. About the segue from uh, high school into college and then into professional life. Uh, where did that begin to happen?
well, when I left high school, one of the things that you really need to do as a string player is, if you're in private lessons, you continue it. But now you're thinking about possibly getting on the audition circuit. So you need coaches. So I always had really, really fabulous coaches. Now, what they thought about me personally, I don't know and I don't care. But I do know that when I went into my lessons, they were demanding from me the same thing that I saw them demanding from the white kids. So I was cool with that. But I just really didn't see limits. I didn't see them then, and I don't see them now. I just like to work all the way up to my capacity,
But
whatever my potential is.
how did you get from how did you get from DC to Chicago? Let's talk about that because that's where the explosion seems to begin, the artistic
Um,
explosion.
Actually, my husband's job. And I didn't want to come, and I wasn't going to come because headlines across the country that year um, showed that Chicago was one of the most racially polarized areas in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Harold Washington running against Upton, I believe it was. And I just thought, there's no way I'm going there. But anyway, after, riding back and forth, a few times, I decided to go ahead and move.
Mm-hmm.
But coming here, I realized now, you have to start auditioning for people. You got to find work. You've got to build on your experience. And up until that time, I'd gone to music festivals. I'd gone to Aspen, and I'd gone to Tanglewood and all these different places. And that activity happened for me so that I could measure my skill set against people on the globe. Because I wasn't interested in just knowing if I was good against that other little Black girl sitting next to me,
Mm-hmm.
or that half playing person that's sitting two stands in front of me who's turning around asking me for fingerings. I wanted to know
And sitting in the
where,
stand ahead of you.
hello,
Oh God.
I just wanted to determine if I could run the race, if I could run the gamut. So
Well, look,
coming to
let's
Chicago,
pause here for a second. I'm sorry.
yeah.
There's so much we have to unpack here.
Mm-hmm.
Already, say right out of college or during
Mm-hmm.
college, you have
Mm-hmm.
this analytical mindset
I did.
and a strategic mindset. Where did that come from?
Oh, it wasn't rocket science. I watched what the white kids did. They went to music festivals, so I was going to go to music festivals. They had private lessons. I was going to have private lessons. See, if I see you horseback riding, there's nothing that's going to tell me that as a Black person that I can't ride a horse. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to assume that whatever I see you do, I can do. And I look at everything that way. If you ice skate, I can ice skate. If you swim, if I want to swim, I'll swim. And so the classical music was no different to me.
No barriers.
None,
Mm-hmm.
none. I just don't have that kind of filter, because if you process that way, then you stop and think. I didn't have time to
Slows you
stop and
down.
think. Yeah, I just want to. If I was going to stop, I was going to be standing in front of a music stand. I was going to be practicing. That's that. That's that. So, um, coming forward, I coming to Chicago, I realized that there's kind of a Mason-Dixon line in this town, in that none of the minorities were playing in any of the higher level groups like the Lyric Opera, Grand Park Symphony, Chicago Symphony, all of that. Okay. This ball of wax is so huge because this country has racism not only in its DNA, but it's structured to leave us out. But so even coming from DC, I was determined I might not be seeing a lot of Black people in classical music, but it doesn't have anything to do with me, because I'm gearing up. I'm getting ready, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to take the auditions, accept it or not. I'm going to do what I saw white people doing. And you get out of school and you go take auditions. Now, the difference for them is that whether they were great or not, the possibility for them to get a job was much, much higher. And for me, okay, so that was a really rude awakening coming to Chicago.
Hmm.
And, and then encountering the Black population here that was in classical music. I have to say it, and they drank their Kool-Aid. They drank that Kool-Aid that said, you're not going to be anything, stop reaching for this higher level stuff. You guys are going to get a little session work. You're going to get to play in some clubs, whatever, but don't look over here at these orchestras. Don't look here to work with us, because stay in your place. Let's just.
But then Renee Baker came on the scene. So then what happened?
Well, I will tell you. I I auditioned for almost every contractor and conductor in town. I had some great experiences and I had some very ugly ones. One in particular, there was a group here at the time called the Chicago Chamber Ensemble, I believe it was. And I contacted them. They invited me to play. And then at my first rehearsal, you know how in string sections you have two people on a stand,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the first part of the rehearsal, um, and of course I was sat on the last stand, there was a music stand and a partner. We go on break. When I come back from the break, oh, I'm now on a separate stand. And I've been told that the woman that was sitting on the stand with me does not want to sit with me.
Now, let me ask you something. That reminds me of an experience I
Yeah,
had in Minneapolis. But when you have stand partners, one person turns the pages and
yeah.
one
The
person.
person on the inside, which I was, of course, turned the page,
Okay.
but she just decided
Even
that
that wasn't enough for her.
oh no,
And where is
no.
she today?
You know what? Mm,
Exactly.
if luck has it, to be honest, I haven't heard anything about her in the last 25 years.
That's my point, Renee.
Right. But see, this is okay, because one time after another, I run into people on jobs, and they're prepared to not like you before you even get there. I show up on a gig, maybe I've been hired to be principal, but of course, there are no other Blacks in the orchestra. I show up, and at break time, I realize that the viola section is standing over in the corner, speaking as loud as they can so I can hear them. And they said, oh, she's got enough attitude to fill a room. I just can't stand her. Now, you don't even know my name. But what you do know is that I was hired to be principal. So that's enough for you to not like me. So let's go forward. Multiply that times 100 or more times.
Sometimes I can break you, but it didn't break you.
It wasn't my problem. See, you know what? I know this is going to sound so simple. My being brown is not a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem for them. Sorry. But I'm not going to absorb that, because when you want, where you want it to exhibit itself is when I'm playing. And that's the other satisfaction that I'm not giving you.
Because you do
You
your
won't
groundwork.
Yep. You won't ever be able to turn around and say, man, didn't she mess up that solo? Never.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the pride with which Paul Freeman appointed me principal with Sinfonietta.
Let's
There were
talk
no
about
other,
Sinfonietta. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There were no other Black principals in the strings but me.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that set people's hair on fire.
But
It
okay, I'm sorry. The Sinfonietta was founded to give instrumentalists, because I like to say instrumentalists because sometimes they say singers and musicians, to give
mhm.
instrumentalists opportunities to play the repertoire, uh,
Mhm.
instrumentalists of color in particular. And so, why were the people in
Was,
the orchestra getting upset that he had appointed you as principal?
well, Paul's Paul's main mission was musical excellence, then musical excellence through diversity. So at the time that I moved here and the time he auditioned people for the orchestra, there weren't enough Blacks here to do an octet that could play at the professional level that he needed for that group.
Yes.
So of course he engaged, he was totally inclusive. But what he was not was dismissive of African American talent. So he knew he was going to have to include some, he was going to have to groom some, et cetera, et cetera. So when I joined Sinfonietta, I was there for the first concert. I was part of the inaugural group. I played the first two concerts from the last chair in the section. And I have to tell you, the shrapnel that I saw falling from other players sitting around me, I decided, you know what? I don't need it. I'm already playing in other places. I've got really healthy self-esteem. So I'm going to take my self-esteem somewhere else.
Okay, I'm sorry. This interview is gonna take a long time because I got
It's okay.
questions, girl. I got
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
You're sitting in the last chair of the
I was in the
viola
last
section.
chair.
And for people that aren't familiar with the orchestra, it's hierarchical. So the first stand is, especially with the violins, you have the concert master,
Typically
and
the best.
and you're ranked by stand.
Yeah.
So now she's in the viola section, which is like the alto section, the
Right.
choir. On the back row, the last stand. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
the shrapnel you're talking about, people didn't want you there.
So the shrapnel coming from the people playing, sitting around me. People dropping notes, people half playing, people fake it. I just thought, whoa.
Oh,
And
you
I'm
were
sitting
like, y'all need to get yourself together because I know
I'm,
what I'm doing.
I'm not going to sit back here. So
There you
because
go.
I had such respect for Paul,
Mm-hmm.
because see, everybody needs a chance at orchestra playing, but I didn't need to be back where I was. So after the second concert, I told the personnel manager and Dr. Freeman, you know, this has been real. Thank you so much for the opportunity, but I am out of here.
Oops.
I am out of here. And that summer, I know I was at Aspen that summer. And when I came back in September, the personnel manager contacted me and said, oh, we've been trying to get in touch with you, as if I just didn't answer my phone. I said, well, you didn't ask anybody where I was. I was in Aspen, and I have an address there and a phone.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, Dr. Freeman would like you to join the section. Okay, great. So I show up, yeah, and here we are, every one of us pulling up the rear in every section. Now,
Mm.
some people are okay with that because they are okay with just being being in the room, being part of the conversation. Nah,
Yeah.
nah, nah. So after the second concert, Paul, I have to keep, I was so familiar with him that I call him Paul, but I need people to respect Maestro Dr. Paul Freeman. That's who I'm
Yes,
talking
yes,
about
yes.
when I say Paul. Paul called me over the summer. He says, you know, what do I have to do to get you back here? I said, it's very simple. It's called first stand.
Know your worth and ask for
Yeah.
it.
I said, it don't have to be first chair, then it had to be principal, but I will not come off that first stand. He said, okay. So of course, when the orchestra regroups now for their second season, they look up and it's like, what? One of them got up here? Oh my God. In the winner's circle, we actually got to deal with a black up here. Oh, it was traumatic for them. And they let me know through my entire 25 years of being there that they felt that I had been given something that I didn't deserve. But here's the point. When you're principal, you got tons of solos, and that's when I showed my mettle. So that's when you had to shut up. Okay? So fast forward. I'm in Sinfonetta. Now I'm orchestra contractor, personnel manager, et cetera, et cetera. In 2010, I am doing, I've written these wedding books. You know, people put wedding books together where they take all the schlock from Pachelbel's canon and this, that, and the other, and they put wedding books together and they sit and play through those same books for every wedding gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote my own wedding book for string quintet. So I happened to be at a very high society wedding in Chicago. Paul Freeman was a guest. When the ensemble got done playing, and I wasn't playing with the group, but I was always there because I like to monitor what people are doing with my music and whatever.
Yeah.
So um, I got up, I did introduce the group, and Paul asked me, would you tell the audience a little bit about the composers that that your group has played? You know, some of the music, you know, they're very interesting. So I asked, I said, did you guys like it? And they said, oh, yes, 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 yes. I said, it's all mine, every piece of it. And Dr. Freeman said, I didn't know you could write. I said, you weren't supposed to till now.
Hmm.
Because I've been his principal violist for years. I never opened my mouth. So he asked me, would you be willing to write a piece for Sinfonietta, a string piece? And I said, no.
Why no?
Why would I write a string piece when you have a whole orchestra sitting on stage?
All right now.
Did you think I couldn't write for the other voices because I'm a string player? I said, oh no, there'll be no string pieces coming out of here. I use the orchestra and more. That first piece, Sundown's Promise, had a 13-piece taiko drum ensemble, a shamisen ensemble, buto dancers, celebrating the Japanese rice harvest.
Wow.
Oh no, I wasn't going to come out and write water music for strings. No. And it was going to Symphony Center too.
Well, let's segue a bit here because
Yes.
when I was, prepping for our talk today, I knew you had a large body of work, but
Mm-hmm.
there was one article that said you have almost 2,000 pieces, compositions. Not we're not talking about the other stuff, but your own compositions.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about your process when you're writing and what inspires you to write your pieces, and then we're going to talk about the Chicago Modern Orchestra project.
As far as writing, really in earnest, I started, um, I was trying to learn a new vocabulary, the vocabulary for new music. The vocabulary that I primarily hear coming from the others who write new music is a studied, hackneyed, formulaic, it all sounds like Gunther Schuller or whatever. I just decided that there had to be a larger vocabulary for new music. And so in order to do that, in order to learn that language, I I figured I had to start writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started with writing for a string quintet, a quartet, and that goes very quickly. So I just kept writing. And honestly, my process, I would be at what I call my third office, Dunkin' Donuts, which before the pandemic was 24 hours. I'd
Yes.
be there at 3 or 4 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And I would sit, studying other scores and writing, even if I didn't write but one line. And sometimes I would come back in the afternoon. Couldn't, I couldn't write at home because home was kitchen and dishes and cooking and a child. So every day without fail, I figured if I'm going to call myself a composer, then you're going to compose. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to go out of here and you're going to face a blank piece of paper every day or continue something that you started. So I did. And then I started hiring people to play it because I didn't like that MIDI sound. So I wanted to know if real professional players could access it and how I could refine the language.
Yes.
So coming forward, right up until that time, I hadn't really done any symphonic writing until Paul said, string piece, that innervated me. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. We have bigger pieces in here. So right away, I started studying formulas for my voice, for my vocabulary. And I work with an engraver.
Mm-hmm.
I could put these sketches down on one piece of paper and he could orchestrate it, but it had full instructions about how to do it. Um, and I just do it every day. So if you're doing some short pieces and some long pieces, if you're diligent, you can write 2 or 3 things in a day, especially if you're writing shorter works for string quartets or students. You just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't stop. So then the works got larger and larger and larger to the point that by 2013, I decided to go back and get a master's in composition. I figured I had put in enough time and I knew my direction as far as the kind of music that I wanted to write. And I was doing it both for classical ensembles, pop ensembles, jazz, and crazy music,
Mm-hmm.
all on the same pendulum swing.
Well, let me
So
ask you something here now.
yes.
It says Chicago Modern Orchestra Project. Was this before or after 2013?
Oh, this was before 2013.
Mm-hmm. So can you just talk about how that formulated and
Mm-hmm.
the work that you did with them? And gosh, we're going to run out of time, but I have so much more I have to ask you.
It's okay. It's okay. Look, I'd always most of my career I had managed orchestras.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I managed the Fox Valley Symphony for 17 years, Illinois Chamber Symphony for 6, and so then now I'm landing at the Chicago Sinfonietta. So we've got 2 decades plus of work there. I will be totally honest. When we got the last general manager to the Chicago Sinfonietta,
Mm-hmm.
and at that time, I had about 9+ years left, but I knew that was going to be the end of my career with Chicago Sinfonietta because I understood very clearly that he did not like me, that he wasn't particularly fond of brown people, did not like classical music. And I represented everything to him that he couldn't stand. So I figured, while I'm here, I'm going to work, do what I have to do, but I have to plan for later. So at this point, now I'm writing, but I realized that the the opportunities that I've been given at Sinfonietta were given to me because I was a minority and Paul saw promise. Now, I wasn't interested in hearing my music posthumously. I wasn't trying to listen from the grave at what somebody might be doing to my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, like with anything, I decided then invest in yourself, and I decided to start an orchestra. So this is around the end of 2006, going into 2007. It started out kind of small, about 17 players. Then it grew to 50.
But you tapped into the network that you had already established by being a
Absolutely.
contractor and an administrator with the
Why
orchestra.
not?
So there's this interaction, that relationship building that's happened already, and you're able to
Correct.
call on these people and
Correct.
give them opportunities that they may
And
not have
I knew,
had.
then I knew they could all play.
That too, of course.
So it was a resource
Mm-hmm.
that I had honed and developed and built on behalf of other organizations. So I decided to use it on behalf of myself. And so doing some research and looking around for mission, et cetera, I knew I was going to be inclusive. I didn't need to add that to my mission statement. I don't have to pontificate about I'm black, you black, let's all be black together. I just wanted inclusion. And so um, honestly, for most of these orchestras, when they play black music, they're playing spirituals. They play the same revered composers, but the same ones over and over again. William Grant Still, George Walker, once in a while, a David Baker.
Florence Price has had a
Florence,
reemergence
yeah, but
this year in
Florence Price
particular.
was
Yeah.
off the table for 85 years before they rediscovered her. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't interested in that. I'm not interested in their table.
Make
I'm
your own.
interested in my music being played. You know what they say? You can sit and wait for them to invite you to their table, or you can build your own. So I will say that a lot of people said, an orchestra? Who starts an orchestra? What? What? What do you think about a trio or a quartet? I said, you know what? I don't need a combo. I need an orchestra to play what I'm envisioning, because those are the voices that I hear. I'm raised in orchestra. I've done my professional career in orchestra. It's going to be orchestra. And so I didn't really have much difficulty convincing orchestra players
Mm-hmm.
and jazz players and the AACM players and anybody. They just came by and they said, you know what? This sister's serious about this. Oh, oh, and she's paying.
That's always a good incentive, isn't
Oh,
it?
she's not, I never asked for anything
Uh
free.
huh. Now,
Because,
Renee, if we can
yes.
pause here, I want to share the screen. I'm my own tech person, so this may be a little thing. I found a piece on your website, actually. Hikikomori.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Why I cue it up? We'll listen for about maybe 2 minutes of it.
Okay, well, let me hear it. Now, thousands of pieces in, I got to hear it first.
Okay. And so, okay, so here we go. And this is
Oh, the
2017.
album, the album is Hikikomori.
Now, can we just talk about this for a minute? I've got questions. That's going to be my
Yes,
phrase today.
I um
I
I
love
got
this
it.
piece. It's
Wonderful.
atmospheric. You've got these layerings that are going on. You've got this pedal point going on with the. It's a bass, or is it a bass?
And brass and brass.
Low brass, yeah. But then all of a sudden, here comes this voice.
Oh, their voices.
Because it's like, wow, it's what we would call contemporary music. It's
Absolutely.
atmospheric, but it also has this grounding to it,
Mhm.
where it's just kind of growing like a wave. There's this wave, and then there's another wave, and then there's another wave as the music starts to come up. Can you just
You know
talk
what?
about your process a little bit more?
Yeah, because it's music and it's not just arbitrary little flitty things where somebody leaned on the keyboard of a music notation program and called it music. Okay, I'll explain to you about Hikikomori. I don't know if you're familiar with the movement.
No, not at all.
Hikikomori is primarily, I think probably the number is maybe 2 million or even more. Now, it was a movement primarily started in Japan of people who withdrew from society. Many of them stay in their bedrooms and within their apartments or in their small domiciles for years because they feel that the pace of life is too much and that they don't fit into the push, push, rush, rush, work, work, um, non individual setting
Mm-hmm.
of primarily Japanese society. This was a movement that I was studying at the time because I couldn't understand why, with the work ethic and the idea that, if you're Japanese or so, you have to excel at everything. There were Japanese and primarily men at the time between like 17 and 40 who were totally isolating themselves and pulling out of society. So I drew on those images and the fact that really many of us have the propensity to be hikikomori. However, we fight it and we find ways to engage with society in whichever ways we can. So there's a lot of things that I leave out of my life because they would short circuit my creating. But in hikikomori, they are not able to absorb the outside world and the inside world. They just can't bring them together. So, just in lay terms, they just don't feel as if they fit into society. So, there's a sadness to that. And so, I typify that with the music, where once in a while you get a glimmer of, I can do this, I can go out.
Appropriate for what's going on right now with the pandemic and social isolation, or social distancing as they call it. Um, Now, gosh, we are going to run out of time, but there are two things that I want to ask you about before anything else. Being a singer,
Yes.
tell me about your operas.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you about the first opera, then the process just goes on from there. In 2012, I did a composer residency in Vietnam. And my purpose of going was to do work that was influenced by the environment that I had placed myself in. And out of that experience came the opera Sunyata, based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So I laid out the whole thing. I wrote the music every day. I did the same thing. I found a coffee shop at the end of the block. I went there and I sat and I wrote. I filled a book with sketches. I did the lighting design. I did the blocking for the stage and everything. Came home and with a little break, I approached the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago and explained to them about this project, had lunch, and they said, oh my God, this is really dark, but we love it. We want to do it. So it took 2 years to get it to production, but it was very well received, very well written. The premise was the ensemble was 32 members from the Chicago Modern Orchestra Project, 10 musicians from a group called The Bridge from France,
Mm-hmm.
7 vocalists who all represented different vocal traditions. So
Is there some
gospel,
significance to the number 7?
no,
I was just okay.
that's just what would fit on that stage because there was movement also. So I had to condense the singers, but I wanted everyone to be seen. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I accessed opera singers, gospel singers, jazz singers, pop singers, and creative improvisers. And those voices covered all of those.
And I
And
just want
gospel.
to add for our viewers, people who will be seeing this at a later time, that there is some video footage of that, but no sound footage. In part of the documentary that I mentioned, it was on the Chicago Symphony Orchestra website. I I have so many questions today, but I wanted to read this little thing for you, which will segue into our next about your upcoming project, and then I want to talk about your films. And this is, I'm sure you recognize this. If letting go is saying no, then what is holding on saying? Come. Can anyone be held? Can I? The impossible conundrum. The closed circle. Why does lightning strike this house and not another? Or is it true that love is blind until challenged by the drawbridge of the mind? The words of James Baldwin.
I love it.
And your project with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, if you can just speak about that.
Um, I had been studying James Baldwin, and I had decided that I was going to create an opera trilogy. I know, can't do just one thing and can't do it small, right?
Tell the story.
So the Arts Club of Chicago, which is a membership, exclusive membership arts club, had contacted me about doing a project. And I said, on the same call, I said, oh, I got a project for you. They said, what? I said, Baldwin Chronicles, Negro Ideologies. They just liked the title. They said, great, great. And they were paying me to do it. So I said, okay, great. So I produced it. The first chapter with a film that I created, 6 singers in the audience. I think an ensemble of 17. Chicago Symphony, African American Network asked, was there more? I said, yeah, but you're not getting the first one. So you will get the Baldwin Chronicles Midnight Ramble. And that will be a more expanded version of the opera. Mm-hmm. But the 3 operas, Negro Ideologies, Midnight Ramble, and Lone Alchemy, which hasn't been produced, covered the phases of James Baldwin's life and his changing beliefs as he goes back and forth from continent to continent. So Midnight Ramble had a chorus, I think a chorus of 18, 10 soloists, I think 44 musicians. It's huge, all on stage. And the reception was amazing. And for the Chicago Symphony to produce it,
quite amazing.
That's
and
all I'm going to say.
And well, I have to say, a few months back, maybe in June or so, there was a clip online actually from one of the performances, and I could not find it. So maybe it expired or something. But I find it fascinating that in this time that a topic such as James Baldwin, which is so timely because of his words and the work that he did, would be taken on by Chicago Symphony. This is before the Black Lives Matter really blew up this year, you know. And I'm hoping that someone will take it up here on the East Coast because we're getting a lot of things now that are being produced that are very timely but very, very serious, and we want also to hear about people's lives and
Yeah.
not just things that have
Not just
happened
the
to people.
deaths.
Yeah.
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 So
Well, the third iteration, which has not um, been produced yet, is 8 singers, 8 instrumentalists. So that's Baldwin Chronicles Lone Alchemy. And here we typify the end, the ending years of Baldwin's life. So he was still productive, but he still had questions. And and he was still wondering why we were fighting the same things that we've been fighting for decades. There'd
yeah.
been little change. So I always loved opera, but I didn't want to write music to someone else's libretto. So people always say, well, who wrote your libretto? I did. I know my work. I know how I want things to go. So it's just as easy for me to write my own libretto and write the music around that.
Well, the other thing, Renee, I remember reading you saying that it doesn't follow the usual trajectory or
Nope.
formula of an opera. And just before we started this interview, I was listening to Hamilton, bootleg on YouTube. But I was listening to Hamilton. I was like, this is really operatic.
Mm-hmm.
And he's incorporated, music and movement and rapping and hip hop elements and contemporary elements into this story about something
Mm-hmm.
that happened over 200 years ago. So I think the whole definition of opera is starting to change. Um,
You know what?
has
It's
been in
not changing.
transition,
It's opening. It's
opening.
opening.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that word better. Yeah,
Yeah. Because we're always going to love the war horses, but I like the form. But the form does not dictate the usage of current mores. So I don't need to produce an opera in the same method that Verdi did or Rossini did. I can take my skill set and still using voices and a libretto and an ensemble and a chorus and all that, yet create something that is applicable to today.
and I think the important part is it compelling? Are you telling an interesting story, even if it's an abstract? Because there's a lot of contemporary composers; they're all over the place. But is it
Yeah,
compelling? Is it telling a story? What is the message or if there's no message? Are there melodies? Are there not melodies? Even with Berg, you have melodies, but it's
right.
not necessarily within the context of what we would have placed a French chanson from, say, 150 years ago. But
Correct.
is it also satisfying for the artist as well?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get that, then you really get a committed, uh, really genuine piece of art that's being presented. That's my feeling about it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of discussion now about what opera is. But here's the other thing, people. For those of you, not only is she a composer, an instrumentalist, arts administrator, what else? Mother, wife. We put those in because we like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Renee Baker is one of the few black women that scores for film. To listen to a bit of Renee's scoring of the film Body and Soul. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with this is a film from, is it 1927?
25.
1925 by black filmmaker Oscar Micheaux. Now, was he from New Orleans? Because that name is French.
Oscar Micheaux was from Illinois. He was from, I'm pretty sure he was from downstate Illinois.
Uh-huh.
Um, Look, where do we get our names?
Listen, when people ask me my name's Sabron, where did that name come from? I say that's the
Mm-hmm.
name my daddy gave me.
Yeah,
That
well,
shuts it up.
thank
Okay,
you.
so here we're going to listen to just the opening. have to say I love.
Hang on, let it go for a minute. There's something you
Oh,
want to hear.
oh, okay.
Almost there. Okay.
So here's the thing. What a contrast.
Yes.
And this is a testament to your compositional abilities and technique in terms of music. There, you're pulling on even some little African influence vocalisms I heard towards the very
Oh,
end, and the jazz elements. But also, the difficulty in scoring now is different from just writing music. Can you just talk about that process for a minute or so?
yeah. Well, basically, with silent film, the first thing I do is I obliterate any score that's on it, and I don't listen. And I break the movie up into frames to determine what kind of journey do I want to take the listener on. Um, the music takes the place of dialogue when you're talking about silent film. So like, unlike what you see on TV, you've got action, you've got talking, you've got to diminish the music, and then you cut it back up when there's a break. I treat music as a dialogue. And so I want the dialogue that I'm providing you to not act as background music. I noticed that you turned that volume up, and that's perfect because it the score has to stand as strongly as the visuals. And so I'm allowing the dialogue to carry you. So I'm not trying to create an emotion. So like, if somebody cries, you don't need me to play it, to put a violin behind it to let you know that somebody's crying because you can see it.
There's
So
a whole
my
science. There's a whole science about music and
Mickey
emotion
Mouse,
now. Yeah.
Mickey Mouse. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm creating another experience. So you're having a visual experience and you're having an an oral experience also, and they're meant to enhance each other. So bring in the singer was Ann Ward, who um, sang her own in her own style. She's an AACM member who passed a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew I could count on her to bring the feeling of what I wanted. I use people that I know have the skill sets that I need.
Now, Renee, I like what you said about a film score, the music being able to stand alone. It's just like with ballet music, or
Yes,
I do have a couple of film scores that I really like. Enrico Morricone, The Mission. You know,
yes,
it's like it's a work of art unto itself.
Absolutely.
And so here's my question, and if this is a little too sensitive, you can tell me no. Has Hollywood or California production companies, have they come knocking, knowing all of the, because this Body and Soul was your first film. You've scored about what, 5 or 6 or 7 since that time?
Now,
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry. There's something to be said for finding your niche. Okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Um, I'm if some Hollywood producer is looking at this and they're interested in me, they can call. But I'm not going after Hollywood. I'm about bringing forward these movies that have historical value, especially any and all films that I can put my hands on that represent what African American life was like in those early film years, both good and bad. I do a ton of research. As a matter of fact, I have spent an inordinate amount of time at the Black Film Center archives at Indiana University, digging.
You're on faculty there, are you not?
Oh no, visiting resident artist. So I'm always researching. So um, without music from kind of now, these films don't get watched. Most people aren't sitting around just looking for silent film or clips that have been lost unless you give them a reason to look and listen. So that's what I'm doing. So, but I'm global. Even though I started with Body and Soul, I've done films from every possible nationality. If I can find a public domain or get it from Library of Congress, then I put my vision on that film.
Well, at the end of this video, we're going to have a listing where you can see and hear some of Renee's works, and I hope that you will buy some of them as well, because we need to support our artists. But now, Renee, we've already run over time, but there's one other thing I have to talk to you about. Well, two actually. Oh, three maybe.
Okay.
And for those that you may not know, you heard her say that she designs her own sets and whatnot, but she's also an artist. And when I say artist, a visual artist. So we're going to have a look at 4 pieces that, let me share this screen again. 4 pieces that of her work. And Renee, we're going to, unfortunately, have to run through these quickly. If you could just
No, that's fine.
tell us what this series is. Is it on screen now?
It flashed and then it went away.
Okay. How about now?
Nope.
Okay, let me pause here. Let me pause. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of Renee's visual works. So here's the first one. You got that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
What do you call this?
Now, see about titles. If I'm not looking at the directory, I can't tell you the titles because most of them are all parts of series,
Mm-hmm.
but they're very large. This one is probably about 6 by 9 feet.
Now, is this canvas or paper?
This is paper.
Mm-hmm. And are you using acrylic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Acrylic, ink, mostly.
Beautiful. See, when I see contemporary art, I go like, would I want to wake up and see that in the morning? And with you, yes. Here's another one. These look like candles to me, but with some kind of signature there. Or people, maybe.
Well, I'm happy with whatever you see. I really am. I'm happy because when I paint, and I paint every day, you develop your voice, but your voice also changes. So I'm not really a figurative painter, but okay, so this day they came out looking like something,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay with that.
Well, what's interesting here is how you have the shading and the light here,
Mhm.
and then, of course, shading here, but yeah, that's the top of it.
I practice.
Practice makes improvement. As they say, practice makes perfect, but I say practice makes improvement. That's
Yeah,
absolutely
sometimes
gorgeous.
I put them on Facebook and people will comment, oh, well, you really hit it with this one. Folks, I'm just documenting. I'm not even asking for your likes or your dislikes. I don't even want your opinion. I'm just sharing. So, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you just zoom on past it.
Well, I have to say, I have a buddy that we go to the museum together. She
Yeah,
is a graphic artist, and she works for Nickelodeon.
gotcha.
So she explains things to me. We went to the Basquiat exhibit downtown. Oh, I guess it was last summer or maybe.
Uh-huh.
Oh God, being the pandemic is scary. I'm losing track of time. I love this one. You know why? The color, the
Good.
blue and the pink juxtaposed to each other. And I can't read the script here actually.
It's because it's systemic writing, meaning nonsense.
Okay. But
So,
now here you have the three, just in that other one with the three, here you have three figures there. Is there any significance to that?
no, that is what I felt like painting that day. Now, here's the thing. I took painting in school, but I remember taking a contemporary art course. And from the first day, the instructor put up a picture and said, now this is what I believe this artist meant. You understand that here is the angst of the world. And the frame is a little crooked. That represents the condition of, I said, you know what? Could it just be that he doesn't know how to make frames?
I
You know,
remember, oh gosh, at Juilliard we had to take art class, all right? And
yeah.
I never taken an art class because in conservatory in Cincinnati, you took a full hours just to get through the music program. In high school, you had to make a choice between music class or art class, and of course, I chose music.
Mhm.
So we're sitting in this class and we're looking at Monet, and as Monet got his older paintings are very misty looking and whatnot, and
Mhm.
I said, well, if they were looking at the sun, did it affect their eyesight? And maybe that's why.
Eh, You know, art art is common sense. Because of capitalism, it has now become something very elite, not for the common man. I want my stuff to be seen all over the place. So I do library exhibits, I do home shows, I do gallery shows. It's about showing, it's about people seeing.
And here's the last one. And for me, contemporary art, I respond to the colors. So I like the purple, and I like the turquoise, and
Mhm.
these dark gold and yellows and pinks that you have laid down. See, if I woke up in the morning and saw this, I was like, yeah, okay, I could live with that, you know. And that's my reaction to art. You want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah. Well, when I'm doing a painting, I generally use the process of mark making in the beginning. So it's absolutely um, willy nilly, just making marks because it's easier for me to join my colors and things if I'm not looking at a completely blank piece of paper. Okay. So the other thing that I end up doing though is I start with a color, and then you find colors that complement that. Most of the time, I try to use a limited palette unless I'm doing a study on a particular color.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you will notice turquoise in almost every of these paintings because I was studying turquoise. I was studying the colors that work with it and how it can be used, how the strokes need to look. Do I need a finished edge or not? There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that go into processing. Should I slap this should I slap this color here? So, but I'm also huge on taking risks. So there's nothing that I put down. If it doesn't work, I paint over it.
That's
There's
art.
nothing, but that's music too.
Yes,
When
yes.
I do my scores, honestly, when I give them to the engraver, sometimes he says, boy, did you run out of paper? Because you got all of this stuff scrunched up. on a few pieces of paper, and it's in ink. I write in ink deliberately. You know why?
Why?
Because I don't want to spend time second guessing what I know came to me at first. It doesn't mean it's gospel, but it means that I need to give a chance to live what came to me first. So if I put it down in ink, it's going to be there.
Now, Renee, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
Let me stop sharing the screen here. Uh, let me ask that one later if I remember it, because we've run over time. We're gonna go probably about another 10 minutes. All of this is going on
Go ahead. You
in
can
our
put you.
interview,
Yeah.
but as what do you see are the necessities for artists moving forward in this time? I was asked to write something to the graduating class of my old high school, and I said, just like the plague of the dark ages,
Yes.
you because these are 17 and 18-year-olds, you may be part of the new renaissance.
Yeah.
And then as I was looking for a word to describe you, Renee Baker, the word renaissance came out because you had this explosion of creativity that is boundless. So the first question would be, what would be your advice, your word to artists in particular? And second, you talked about receiving. And I always am curious about people's relationship with the spiritual world in terms of the arts. That
Gotcha.
is there inspiration, or do you feel particularly aligned with the spiritual world in the making of your art?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. No, I'm a spiritual being, so it comes out in everything. But there's no waiting for inspiration. There's no, oh, how should I? Picasso said, um, his quote, he had a quote about inspiration. He said, inspiration exists, but it must find you working.
Hmm.
So if you're sitting on your little mountain, chanting your mantras, waiting for it to come to you, then you go ahead and sit there.
It'd be like, up, time's up.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I don't want to make this secular. But if you have an egg, until you crack that egg's never going to be anything but an egg in the shell, right?
And
So
if you
you
leave it
have to
too
cook
long,
it,
it's gonna go rotten.
right? But if you want it to become something, then you've got to break it. You have to use it. You have to be in there doing it. So whether you're an instrumentalist or a composer or painter, whatever, you have to be actively engaged with your art. You also have to turn off external whisperings. This may appear to be a spiritual concept, and in a way it is. External whisperings come from advertising. They come from other people. They come from watching YouTube. They come from watching other people's Facebook pages, including mine. Don't pay attention to what I'm doing. Do you
Mm-hmm.
do do your work? So if you, the most important word for me, first word is integrity. The second word is intent. So what is it that I'm trying to do? What is it that I want to say? And is it mine? That's where the integrity comes in. Am I copying somebody? Or am I just learning from something and filtering it? You have to be genuine about your pursuits.
Yeah.
If it is only a means to money, you have to accept the fact that you might fail.
Or it may not last.
Mhm. So, do you love it enough to do it if nobody paid you? Now, I'm lucky, honestly, because my husband says, you turned everything into a business.
We need you to
Everything.
teach some classes.
Mhm. He said, you turn everything into a business. Well, what I need everything to do is to fund itself. I need to sell a few paintings if I'm going to keep collecting canvases and paints and whatever, but I love it. I am lucky that I have a gallery that represents me, et cetera, et cetera. But how'd they find me? Stumbling and bumbling around, asking for advice. I can't draw, not a lick, but I can visualize, I can match colors, I can put something interesting on canvas
Mm-hmm.
and paper. Not everything is as interesting as the other, but it doesn't stop me. So that one isn't as interesting as this one. So what? I can go back and change anything. As long as I own it, it's still a work in progress. Anything that includes my compositions and my scores. I've gone back sometimes and done 2 or 3 different scores for a movie because once I screened it, I thought, ooh, that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Or I wanted to do something different. So to anybody that's interested in a life of art, not a life in the art, because then you're separating your life from the pursuit of money for what you do. Live your life as an art, from your cooking to the way you bathe yourself, to the way you wash your dishes, to the way that you paint. It all has to be part of your practice, part
Wow.
of your practice as a person. And so this is why for me the arts are not separate. Why I can go all day long and keep writing or go all day long and keep painting
Mm-hmm.
because it's just what I do. It's my life.
Oh gosh, I wish I had. I wish 20 years ago. I think was it 20, maybe 15 years ago when I sang with the Sinfonietta. I'm not even sure. I can't remember what year it was,
Oh, it was more than that.
but it was in the 2000s because it was after 9/11. I do know that, but I wish that I had had people around me like you know, and for anyone that can sit at your feet and absorb some of that energy and learn from you would be such a gift. And I thank you for this time. We have run over time, but that's okay. I appreciate your sitting down and talking with me. And for those
Oh,
for
such a
those of you
pleasure.
listening, this is the term Renaissance man, Renaissance person, Renaissance woman. Renaissance means rebirth. Well, she's still in the process of birthing her creativity. And what an inspiration to all of us as artists, to all of us as who are in various stages of our career, that we can go forward and keep making art until that day we draw our last breath.
Mhm.
So, Renee Baker, thank you again so much for spending time here. And
Yes.
this is our first presentation on C'est Bon. That's the name of our
Thank you.
series.
Thank
And
you.
we just appreciate you so much. Thank you.